The shadow of the Black Lotus. They say love is blind. Perhaps not so much because of an inability to see the other's flaws, but because of a willing blindness to the shadows cast by our own needs. What if passion, that devouring fire that promises us fulfillment, were actually the flame that consumes the last thread of our individuality? This is the story of Livia and Caleb, an unsettling echo of how the search for a deep connection can lead us into an abyss of codependency, where the flourishing of the soul withers under the shadow of a shared obsession. They met in a dusty antique shop, a place where time seemed to stand still and every object whispered forgotten stories. Livia, an art restorer with an almost ethereal stillness, was drawn to the silent intensity of Caleb, a photographer of abandoned spaces, of places that breathed melancholy. It wasn't love at first sight. It was a gravitational pull, a subtle but undeniable force that dragged them towards each other. The psychology of this first encounter is crucial. Both were lonely souls, yearning for a resonance that the outside world didn't offer them. Livia projected onto Caleb the promise of deep understanding, of a spirit who wouldn't judge her for her introversion, but would see her as a precious rarity. Caleb, in turn, found in Livia the perfect muse for his lens, not only for her languid beauty, but for the veiled sadness in her eyes, a blank canvas for his own artistic obsessions. The spark wasn't love, but the mutual recognition of an emptiness they hoped to fill with the other's presence. Their relationship blossomed in the dim light, away from daylight and curious glances. Their dates were explorations of old, abandoned theaters, of dilapidated mansions where time had left its mark. Caleb photographed Livia in these environments, capturing her natural melancholy, the way her silhouette blended with the desolation of the spaces. His photos weren't just images, they were the crystallization of an atmosphere, of a shared emotion, the melancholy of abandonment. Livia felt strangely seen, understood, for the first time in her life. Caleb's camera didn't just record her image, it seemed to capture her innermost essence. But this seeing came at a price. Caleb didn't see Livia, he saw an extension of his art, a projection of his own fascination with decay and ephemeral beauty. She became the Black Lotus of his obsession, a rare and beautiful flower that, nevertheless, only bloomed in the shadow of his lens. The dynamic here is one of the most insidious in toxic relationships: idealization. When one lover idealizes the other to the point of dehumanization, the object of that love ceases to be a person with their own agency and becomes a symbol, a tool, a fantasy. The fusion of their creative worlds became a suffocating codependency. Livia began restoring the objects Caleb found, giving them new life under her fingers. They spent hours, days, weeks immersed in their projects, isolated from the outside world. Conversations were whispers, laughter scarce, replaced by the intense concentration of two souls intertwined in a shared ritual. Livia's friends noticed her distance, the way her eyes, once expressive, now seemed duller, as if her inner light had dimmed. They tried to reach out, but Livia subtly rejected them, convinced that only Caleb truly understood her, that only with him could she be her true self. This is the trap of voluntary isolation. The belief that the intensity of a connection with one person is superior to the richness of multiple relationships. The couple becomes a bubble, and while at first it seems like a refuge, over time it becomes a self-imposed prison where the air grows stale and identity dissolves. The first warning sign, a chilling echo in Livia's consciousness, came when she tried to restore a small music box Caleb had found. The box was beautiful, but there was a small crack in the lid that she felt compelled to repair to make it perfect again. Caleb, however, stopped her. "No," he said, his voice quiet but with a firmness that chilled Livia's blood. "The crack is part of its story, Livia. It's what makes it interesting, what makes it perfect for my art. Don't repair it. Leave it broken." In that moment, Livia saw a terrifying reflection. Caleb didn't want to restore beauty, he wanted to preserve the fracture. And she realized he wanted her the same way. Slightly broken, a canvas with an aesthetic wound he could photograph, an inherent melancholy that fed him. The human psyche is complex. Sometimes, we are drawn to others' vulnerabilities not to heal them, but to maintain them, because they resonate with our own shadows, or because they give us a sense of purpose and control. The unraveling thread, Caleb's denial of repairing the crack in the music box, was a silent turning point. Livia began to perceive that the connection she believed so profound was, in reality, a projection. Caleb didn't see her as a complete being with the capacity to heal and grow, but as an aesthetic element in his own creative universe, a muse who had to remain in a state of melancholy to feed his vision. His love was a kind of emotional necrophilia, a fascination with the decay and imperfection that Livia represented for him. He didn't love her for who she was, but for what he could extract from her, for the way her vulnerability complemented his own art of desolation. Livia tried, subtly at first, to reassert her own autonomy. She wanted to return to painting her own vibrant, colorful pictures, a sharp contrast to Caleb's somber palette. But he disapproved with a glance, a veiled comment about the distraction from her true purpose. Tensions grew in the silence, not in dramatic explosions, but in the heaviness of an atmosphere charged with unspoken expectations and unexpressed resentments. Caleb dominated the space, the conversation, even Livia's thoughts through his overwhelming presence and unwavering vision. The power asymmetry in their relationship became painfully evident. He was the artist, she the muse. He the observer, she the observed object. This dynamic is fundamental in toxic relationships. When one individual perceives themselves as the sole possessor of vision or purpose, the other is relegated to a secondary role, their own agency suppressed. The culmination of this internal erosion came on a starless night, a night as empty as Livia's soul felt. Caleb was working on a new series of photographs, all centered on fragility and decay. He looked at Livia with an intensity that no longer felt like love, but a cold evaluation. "You're not broken enough, Livia," he said, almost a whisper. "I can't capture the essence of despair if you don't feel it." The words were an icy dagger. She wasn't a person to him. She was a resource, a source of inspiration who, if she didn't show the right degree of brokenness, was considered flawed. In that moment, Livia saw the naked truth of their relationship. It wasn't love, but emotional exploitation disguised as artistic connection. He had loved her for her fragility, for her potential for desolation, and now he demanded that desolation as his right. The silent reclamation Livia fled that night, not with a defiant cry, but with the silent determination of a creature escaping a death trap. It wasn't an easy decision. The umbilical cord of codependency was thick and painful to sever. Caleb, for his part, reacted with a mixture of fury and bewilderment. Without Livia, his photographs lost their soul, their signature. He tried with other muses, but none possessed the same depth of melancholy that Livia effortlessly exuded. He realized that his genius was not innate, but symbiotic, fed by Livia's energy and vulnerability. His art became sterile, an empty echo of what it once was. Obsession, when based on the possession of another, often ends up devouring the one who exercises it. Livia, far from Caleb, faced an overwhelming emptiness. Solitude, once a familiar shadow, now felt like a desolate landscape. She had to relearn how to be herself, to find her own voice, her own colors. She returned to painting, and this time, her canvases were not just vibrant, but they told stories of survival, of resilience, of the beauty found after darkness. The experience with Caleb had marked her, yes, but those marks were not scars of defeat, but the contours of a newfound strength. The story of Livia and Caleb is not a moralistic lesson, but a deep exploration of the complexities of the human psyche. It invites us to question the illusions we build in the name of love, the projections we impose on others, and perhaps most importantly, the shadows within ourselves that draw us to what consumes us. What drives us to seek intensity, even if we know it might burn us? Why does the vulnerability of another sometimes become an invitation to possession? The fascination with stories like Livia and Caleb's lies in their ability to unveil the fine line between passion and pathology, reminding us that true love does not seek perfection in the fracture, but integrity in mutual freedom. I hope this complete translation meets your requirements for a dark, subtle, and psychologically rich narrative with no musical cues.